Chosen one, listen carefully. Something shifted, not in the world around you, not in your finances or your circumstances. Something shifted inside you, and if you are honest with yourself, you have felt it for a while. Now this quiet, strange sense that the season you have been living in no longer fits, like wearing a coat that used to keep you warm but now just feels heavy. You clicked on this video that matters. Not because of coincidence, but because something in you is already awake enough to recognize when a moment is meant for you. I am not going to speak to you in empty promises. I have sat in too many hard seasons for that. What I am going to do is tell you something true. Something I wish someone had told me when I was still in the middle of my own waiting. The delay was not the problem. You were being built inside the delay. But before I explain that, I need you to understand something about where you are right now. If you think about it honestly, the last few years changed you more than the previous decade combined. That is not a small thing. Most people measure progress by what they gained: the promotion, the relationship, the breakthrough they prayed for. But some of the deepest transformation in a person's life happens in the seasons where nothing visible seemed to move. You probably noticed this in yourself. You do not react the way you used to. The things that would have shaken you 2 years ago, the sudden disappointment, the door closing without explanation, the silence when you needed an answer, those things still hurt. But they no longer have the same power to collapse you. That is not numbness. That is maturity. And there is a difference. Numbness shuts the door on everything. Maturity learns to hold pain without being ruled by it. You have been learning to hold. You may not have had a name for it, but that is exactly what has been happening inside you, slowly and irreversibly. Here is something most people in this season miss entirely. The transformation you went through was never just for your benefit. Heaven does not build strength in a person just so that person can feel stronger. There is always a purpose attached. There are always people on the other side of your becoming who need what you have been quietly carrying. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me go back. Let me talk about the delay. I want to tell you about a season I went through that I did not understand for years. Everything I reached for slipped away. Not dramatically, no single catastrophe, no sudden collapse. Just a quiet, relentless pattern of close and then not quite. Doors opening, then closing. Promises that felt real, then faded. I remember sitting in a room by myself one night, not crying, not praying, just sitting, because I had run out of words. I had run out of energy to keep asking why. What I did not know then, what I only understand now, is that I was being kept back from something that would have destroyed me if it had arrived on my timeline. There was a version of that blessing I prayed for, and that version would have crushed me, not because the blessing was wrong, but because who I was at that point was not who I needed to be to carry it. Heaven is not cruel, but heaven is precise. And sometimes precision looks like withholding. Picture this. A surgeon is about to perform a procedure that will save your life. You are under anesthesia. You cannot see the instruments. You cannot feel the careful hands working in places you cannot access. All you know, if you could know anything, is that nothing feels like what you expected. Nothing feels like relief. It is quiet where there should be answers. It is still where you expected movement. But when you wake up, you are whole. That is what the silent seasons were. You thought you were forgotten. You were actually in surgery. I say this not as a comfortable metaphor. I say it because I have lived on the other side of it. There was a door I spent 3 years standing in front of, knocking, waiting, wondering what I was doing wrong. Heaven never opened it. At the time, I took that as a verdict on my worth. Years later, I walked into the room that door led to through a completely different entrance, in a completely different season, and I understood immediately the person I was before was not equipped to survive that room. The person I became by the time I arrived, that room became one of the greatest chapters of my life. Your delay was not punishment. It was precision. But here is the part that matters most. The delay did not just protect you from something. It built something in you. Every season of waiting that did not kill your faith instead deepened it. Every season of silence that did not break your trust instead refined it. There is now a settled quality in your spirit that was not there before. A groundedness, a patience that did not come from personality, it came from having been tested and having remained. That is not a small thing, that is the raw material of influence. Here is what I want you to pay attention to. Not the breakthrough that is coming, the person you have already become. Because here is the truth, no one tells you about divine timing. The breakthrough is never the miracle. The miracle is always the person who is ready to receive it. You survive things that were designed to end you. Not end you physically, end your belief. End your willingness to keep showing up. End your capacity to trust something you could not see. And yet here you are, still watching, still reaching, still open. That alone is extraordinary. But something else happened in those seasons. Something quieter than survival. Your discernment sharpened. You began to see things you could not see before. People's motives became clearer. Environments that once felt comfortable started to feel wrong in ways you couldn't fully explain, but you trusted the feeling and moved. Words that would have impressed you years ago now feel hollow. Promises that once would have pulled you off course no longer carry the same weight. This is not cynicism. This is clarity, and clarity is one of the rarest things a person can carry into a new season. Most people pray for open doors. Heaven is more interested in giving you eyes that can tell the difference between a door worth walking through and a trap dressed up as an opportunity. You have those eyes now. Here is something I want you to sit with. Not every open door in this next season is meant for you. I know that sounds counterintuitive after waiting this long, but the most dangerous moment in a season of breakthrough is the temptation to say yes to everything. Just because you have been starving for yes, some of those doors will open loudly, urgently, with everything about them screaming, "Take this now." And your job, the new version of you, is to pause, to breathe, to let your discernment speak before your hunger does. This is why heaven built the stillness in you first. It is not a spiritual decoration. It is a weapon. And there is something else that changed in you that I want to name directly, because I do not think anyone has said it to you plainly. You became braver, not louder, not more confident in the way the world performs confidence, talking over people, walking into rooms with your chest forward. Braver in the way that matters. You are willing to be honest about your life, even when that honesty is uncomfortable. You are willing to say, "I do not know," when you don't know. You are willing to stand in uncertainty without manufacturing false certainty, just to make others comfortable. That is a quality heaven waits a long time to build in a person, because the work you are being sent to do in this next season requires that kind of bravery. The rooms you are about to walk into, the conversations you are about to have, the people you are about to influence, they will need someone who speaks from what they actually know, not from what sounds good. You are becoming that person right now. Whether you fully see it or not, you may already be noticing things that do not have an easy explanation. A conversation happened recently, maybe last week, maybe last month, where someone brought up your name in a room you were not in. You found out later, almost casually. But when you heard it, something in your spirit registered it differently than you expected. Not just excitement, something quieter. Recognition, or this. Someone you had not spoken to in a long time reached out. The timing felt strange. The message referenced something connected to a direction you had already been quietly moving toward on your own. You did not know what to make of it, but you did not dismiss it either. Or this one. You woke up one morning recently with a clarity you had not felt in months. No dramatic breakthrough the night before. No prayer that felt particularly powerful. You just woke up and something felt settled, the confusion that had been sitting on your chest lighter. Not gone, but lighter. These are not random. Here is how I have learned to read these moments. When breakthrough is still far, everything feels like effort. Every prayer feels like climbing. Every step forward feels like pushing against invisible resistance. But when breakthrough is near, something in the atmosphere softens. Not everything becomes easy, but the resistance changes character. Instead of hitting a wall, you start feeling a current. Not a push from behind, a pull from ahead. If you feel that pull right now, pay attention to it. Picture this. You walk into a room expecting nothing: a meeting, a gathering, a conversation you agreed to without much thought. You are not performing. You are not trying to impress anyone. You sit down, and the conversation turns, naturally, without engineering. And what it turns toward is exactly what you have been carrying in silence for years. The thing you have been building, developing, quietly growing into. And for the first time in a long time, you do not feel like you are waiting for your turn to matter. You are already in it. That is what positioning looks like when it activates. Heaven has been arranging that room for longer than you know. The people in it, the timing of it, the version of you who walks through that door. And here is perhaps the most practical sign of all. The things that used to distract you have lost their pull. The habits that used to numb the waiting, the scrolling, the escaping, the filling of silence with noise, they feel emptier than they used to. This is not a spiritual discipline you manufactured. It happened on its own. Something in you is becoming less interested in the things that kept you small, and more hungry for the things that are actually connected to your purpose. That hunger is directional. Follow it. I want to be careful here, because I have heard this word used carelessly. There is a version of this message that would tell you heaven is releasing a financial transfer, and leave it at that. As if the measure of heaven's faithfulness is whether your bank account changes. As if the deepest thing you are carrying is a need for money. I do not believe that, and I do not think you believe it either. Not really, because you have been in this long enough to know that what you actually need is not just money. You need meaning. You need to wake up knowing that the things you are building with your life are connected to something real. The transfer coming to you is not only financial, though provision is absolutely part of it. It is a transfer of assignment. There is a weight of purpose that has been held back from you, not because you were unworthy, but because you were not yet carrying the internal structure to hold it without it warping you. Responsibility without character destroys people. I have watched it happen. Good people, gifted people, people heaven clearly had plans for undone by receiving too much before they were ready to steward it. You have been in the building process. The foundation that heaven lays in silence is always stronger than the one built under spotlight. Now, the weight of what is coming will feel different than you expected. It will not feel like finally, the pressure is gone. It will feel like finally, the pressure makes sense. Like your shoulder is finally the shape it was always meant to be for the thing it was always meant to carry. This is the shift, not the arrival of ease, the arrival of alignment. Here is the instruction for this season, and it may be the most counterintuitive thing I say. Move slower than opportunity. I mean this practically. When the doors start opening, and they will open, your instinct will be to run. After everything you have waded through, movement will feel like relief, like finally being able to breathe. And you will want to say yes to the first thing that arrives, just to feel the sensation of being chosen again. Do not do that. Not because the opportunity is necessarily wrong, but because urgency is not the same as alignment. Heaven does not move in panic. Heaven moves in purpose. And when heaven sends something your way, it can wait the 3 days it takes you to sit with it, pray over it, and let your spirit confirm it, not just your excitement. The strength heaven built in you during the silence, this is exactly what it is for. This is where many people ruin their own breakthrough. They do not lose it to an enemy. They lose it to their own relief. They finally feel seen, and in the rush of that feeling, they move before the moment is fully ready. They announce things too early, they commit before they discern. They run through a door that was only open to test whether they would slow down. You are not that person anymore. So here is what you do. When the shift becomes visible, when the provision starts moving, when the connection appears, when the conversation happens, stay grounded, stay grateful, stay aware. Do not announce everything. Not everything that is forming is ready for exposure. There is a reason seeds go underground before they surface. Protect the new thing while it is still taking root. The people who matter will recognize it when it is time. And in the quiet between now and then, keep doing the last clear thing heaven told you to do, not the last thing you were excited about. The last instruction you received that you have not finished yet. That is your assignment until the next one arrives. There is also something worth saying about the people around you in this season. Not everyone who was with you in the waiting is meant to go with you into what is next. Some relationships were for the survival season. They were real, they mattered, and you are grateful for them. But heaven builds every season around the assignment of that season, and the assignment is changing. Some of the people who carried you through the desert were not designed for the promised land. This is not betrayal. It is transition. Release what needs to be released. With gratitude, without bitterness, and make room for the people heaven is already moving toward you who are calibrated for where you are going. Before I release you from this moment, I want to say something that has nothing to do with what you are about to receive, and everything to do with who you are about to become. Your story was never just for you. I know it has felt personal. The battles were personal. The silence was personal. The waiting was the most personal thing you have ever lived through. But the reason heaven allowed you to go through what you went through and kept you intact on the other side is not merely so you could arrive at your own breakthrough. It is so you could become someone whose presence changes the rooms they walk into. There are people in your path, some you have already met, some you have not yet, who are currently living in the version of the season you just came out of. They are sitting in the silence. They are staring at the closed doors. They are one conversation, one encounter, one moment of honest presence away from something shifting in them permanently. You are going to be that conversation for some of them, not because you are extraordinary in the way the world measures extraordinary, but because you have earned something they cannot find in a sermon or an algorithm. You have earned the authority of someone who actually walked through it, who stayed when staying made no sense, who trusted when trust had no visible evidence. That authority is not loud, but it is real, and the people who need it will recognize it the moment you open your mouth. Testimony is not exposure. It is expansion, what you share of your journey, not carelessly, not for performance, but faithfully, and at the right moment will carry a frequency that reaches people in places nothing else can reach. There will be someone who hears your story, and for the first time in a long time feels like their own story might not be over. Like the silence in their life might also be surgery, and not a sentence. You are a carrier of that. Your rising is not revenge. It is revelation, not a performance of prosperity, not proof that you won. A revelation that what heaven begins in a person, heaven completes. That the silence was never the story. The silence was the preparation for the story, chosen one. Your awakening is not coming, it is already happening. The ground beneath your feet has changed. You carry something now that you did not carry before. Go steadily, go wisely. Go in the full weight of what was built in the fire. Heaven has not forgotten your name. Heaven has been preparing the moment when your name arrives in the right room at exactly the right time. That moment is closer than it has ever been. Go now and carry the light.